It's great to be back at Rotary, and I think one thing that is usually folks don't discover in my bio, and I appreciate that wonderful intro. I was a Rotarian, actually, when I was in Cambodia, and I think some of you have heard of this. And so, believe it or not, there was a Rotary Club in Cambodia, and the rotation wasn't around profession, it was around what country you were from. And so we had folks from a bunch of different countries. I think we had 40 at one point. But anyway, so Rotary is near and dear to my heart. That was also where I made a lot of good friends in a faraway land called Cambodia. So we had the international Rotary annual meeting when I was there too, which was amazing. So I got to meet the international president and all sorts of things. So it's good to be back here with our own Rotary here in my hometown. Now, I also want to mention it's great to have my parents here this morning. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for joining lunch today. And I also just want to recognize, I know we went through introductions, but our incredible leaders from APD who are here, our chief, deputy chief, and other officers. Thank you for all your service and for what you do in Albuquerque. Now, it's been 4 months, almost to the day, since I took office as the 10th mayor of Albuquerque. And we're, of course, celebrating our 316th birthday, I think. And so the reason we've only had 10 mayors is because that's just the modern version of the sort of strong mayor system of Albuquerque. But I do want to acknowledge there have been hundreds of mayors of Albuquerque. And but for me, I get this opportunity at a special time in our city. I think a challenging time as well. And it's something that I think anyone who runs for this office in its current incarnation, there's no way you can actually be prepared for this office. I believe that I had tremendous training and tremendous preparation for this job, but I think it would just be naive to say that I was totally prepared for it. And so what that means is our city, whether we compare ourselves to larger cities or not, I think we all also know that we are a big city. We have 6,000 employees, we have a $1 billion budget, and we've got a host of challenges and opportunities. And so this is something that even when I go to the Conference of Mayors and other areas in our country and meet with other elected officials, you know, we're the 32nd largest city in the country. And that actually means something for when you think of cities like Pittsburgh and Detroit, they're actually smaller when it comes to being mayor because their cities are mostly suburbs and things like that. So believe it or not, we punch way above our weight when it comes to big city problems and have much more in common with large cities mentally that we think about than we do some cities that might be in our own region. So I've learned a lot on this job, and I think on the lighter side, even on my first day, I learned just how big the city is. I literally walked into the elevator, and there was a gentleman there, his name's Ken Mitchell, he's kind of famous at the city, and he shook my hand, and he said, you know, happy first day, and I said, you know, where do you work in the city? And he said, I'm the guy who works in all the buildings and knows where all the different physical assets are of the city. And I was like, wow, that's pretty important. And I said, you know, I'm gonna visit every city building as mayor. I thought that was a mayoral thing to do on my first day. And he kind of looked at me and he was like, good luck, there's 664. And then the doors just closed and I went up. So it actually is a big city. And even at the, you know, you take over in December 1, and so you get the holidays as a new mayor. And we have so many Christmas tree lightings. It's actually a really cool thing in Albuquerque. But, you know, another quick story is that the Loveless Christmas tree lighting, you know, the big Christmas tree on top of the hospital, it's the one that used to change color whether or not it was a burn night or not. So I was very excited. This is so fun. And the CEO of Loveless hands me like a remote control device with a big red button. And he's like, hey, this is, you know, press this button to turn on the light to light the Christmas tree. And I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And but then there were a couple of buttons on there, and it was kind of a complicated device. And so before we started, I paused, and I was like, well, hold on, I need to make sure I get this right, because I'm new. And I was like, do I do that button, and do I have to aim it anywhere, you know, and this kind of thing? And everybody just started laughing. They were like, it's not real, Mayor. Like, The button doesn't actually light the Christmas tree. Like, there's a guy over there with a light switch, who just turns it on. So you learn some things along the way. Now, I think I've also learned on sort of the more serious side. We have some things going on in our city that are real challenges. And I think in no way as a credit or discredit to anyone who came before me, because they all tried hard on these issues. But today we also know that we have, and I'm thinking more in December, I hope we've made some progress, and I'll talk about that, but we have some major issues, obviously, when it comes to crime in our city. And internally, when I stepped in, there were serious challenges inside APD. We had a front line that was demotivated. We had a leadership structure that was unknown. We also had the DOJ sort of breathing down our necks in terms of all the challenges that we have. That's what our world was like in December. And we also know that we've got a little bus project on Central that turned out to be a little more challenging than I thought. And we also had a much bigger budget deficit than I think anyone was aware of. And so these are the things that I immediately directed our city's attention on right away. Because despite everything that I campaigned on and ran on and all the big exciting ideas, we've got to clean up a few things first. And that's what we've been focused on really in our first 4 months. So I also want to share, people ask me all the time, what is the state of the city? And I got to tell you, there's a lot of ways you can answer that. But I think we also, part of what we need to do is acknowledge that the state of the city is we've got some challenges. We do have a skyrocketing crime situation. We've got one of the highest crime rates when it comes to property crime. We have a violent crime problem that's been with us for several years and that we're even seeing is spiking now. We have a challenged school system that just isn't producing the workforce that we need. And we have a stagnant economy that has really never recovered from the recession. We know we have a brain drain. We know that most of our children have either left or are going to leave and don't have plans to come back. This is right now, unfortunately, primarily the state of the city. Yet somehow, this is still a great place to live. It's a place somehow we're all very proud of. And it's a place that we wouldn't trade for anywhere else in the world when it comes to live. But it's a path that is not sustainable for our families or the next generation. And it's a path that we actually have to change. So that brings me to the two themes that I really ran on in my campaign for mayor, which I believe were very nonpartisan, and they were very different than I think a lot of the other candidates who were running. Because I believe there were two overarching themes that trump even these specific challenges around education or schools or crime or economy. There are two themes that I think have held us back recently. And they're themes that, frankly, when I would talk about them with campaign people and pollsters and analysts, they would all say, don't talk about that. Just talk about more police officers. Or, just talk about how you're going to create jobs. And I pushed back really hard on this, and I think that's one of the great things about even public financing. I want to share with you the two reasons that I believe fundamentally people gave me this opportunity for, and the two things that I campaigned on above even specific policy issues. And the first one is a lack of an ownership mentality in our city. And I think for too long, and this goes for politicians, I think it goes for business leaders, I think it's a collective issue that we've been facing. We have been looking to others to solve our problems. We've said, Santa Fe has to change all these laws so that Albuquerque can deal with our issues. Or we've said that DC has all these issues that they've got to fix, and we have to fix that before Albuquerque can actually turn around. Or we see this most clearly, I think, with APS, where we constantly, as a city, point the finger at APS for all our challenges. Now, it's not to say that all of those entities can't help us. That would be great. But I think, unfortunately, we've been waiting too long, and we've been using up time by waiting for others, or I think in many cases blaming others. And we see this where even though we have challenges in areas like our school system and our court system, I know that as a city, and at least as mayor of this city, we cannot blame people anymore. We can't wait for folks to deal with our challenges for us. We have been delaying a lot of tough choices, and we're not going to delay those anymore. And it started actually with reforming APD. There is exactly one member of the APD leadership left at APD. Now, I know everyone did everything they can before then to try and help public safety, but the strategies and the plans were just not working. And that's why I brought in new management. It was the largest reform in APD's history. And I believe now it's working a lot better. We'll see. But I gotta tell you, you have to make some big choices. And it started with our own police department, and that's why I'm also so grateful to see our new leadership here with us today. It also meant, unfortunately, dealing with our budget challenge. We've had a structural budget deficit, and what I mean by that is we have a flat economy. That means GRT is not going up. We have increasing healthcare costs, which is driven by external forces from the city, whether it's DC or whether it's cost issues, but the fact is it's true. And I gotta give credit to my predecessor. He did a tremendous job year after year of plugging those holes. He would sweep money from accounts that I found as state auditor. They would hold off on hiring. The biggest way we plugged the budget deficit was vacancy savings. And a lot of that was actually in our own police department. So they used a lot of tricks and a lot of Band-Aids, and they did a great job of moving the ball forward one more year with the hope that the economy might turn around. And it just hasn't happened, and crime has gotten worse. So now we are going to address that deficit structurally, and council, frankly, did it for me. So as you know, I never wanted to be a part of raising taxes. No politician does. But I got to tell you what council did on an 8-1 vote, which I could not even veto if I wanted to. What council did is say that there are no more excuses. If we waited even a month longer for that vote, we would have had to wait till July of 2019 to hire more officers to deal with our homelessness issue. That is the reality of that vote. And so council, again, made that decision for us, but I got to tell you, what they acknowledged was this. We cannot delay these tough decisions any longer. That's how bad our challenges are. Now, the last thing I want to share about this is there has been this attitude around, I think, accountability, and this is where I want to talk about APS. I'm a big believer in accountability. This was fundamental to the auditor's office. But I believe, frankly, politicians have been using that so much that it delays them making the tough choices. Right? I would love to stand up here and rail on the county or the state or DC or APD or any other organization and say we have to hold them accountable. We got to hold the judges accountable. We got to hold the courts accountable. You know what, as citizens, that's true. But I got to tell you, I'm not going to wait any longer for that. Accountability cannot be an excuse for stepping up. That's what our city has to do in every one of those areas, and that's what my administration is committed to going forward. Now, that also means that we've got to focus and we have to follow through. And I think this was the second challenge that we faced over the last few years. We have tried all sorts of wonderful small pilot projects. APD is riddled with acronyms on all sorts of programs to address every kind of crime you can think of. We also do programs in especially the homeless arena where we have success with 50, 20 homeless folks. Yet we have almost 5,000 homeless people on the streets. We've been scratching the surface, trying to find something that will work. The problem is we've been doing that for 6 years. We have to push past testing ideas and pilot projects and actually make some big bets that will make a difference. The other thing is we've got to get past this notion that we just need one more study. If only we got some more data on crime. We don't need any more data. I don't need a report to tell me that crime is high in the International District. This is the kind of thing that has been holding us back. And I love data. You know, it's been the foundation of pretty much every office I've had. And of course, we're going to leverage data. But we actually have to take action. And that means a little bit less task forces and commissions and a little bit more direct help where we need it. That's where I believe we've got to go for the future. So that brings me to the 3 themes of our administration for the next 4 years. Number 1, it's urgency. I do believe we cannot continue on this path. You know, when I was in high school, if I think to some of my earliest memories, we used to be on par with Denver, with Austin. I mean, back then, actually, I think we were sort of ahead of Austin in our own minds, at least. Now we've slipped. Now our peer groups, in so many ways, are other cities, Lubbock, Not to just dog on Lubbock, but, there we go. It says it all right there. We can't wait any longer to deal with these issues. And so I believe that we've got to look to ourselves. We have to take ownership of these challenges from now on. It's our responsibility. And we also have to realize that we've got to focus on being the best city we can be. And I think that focus really just comes in 4 basic areas. We have to reduce crime. We can't have a burgeoning economy without fixing crime. We can't keep our kids here without fixing crime. It is so challenging that even though all of those issues are related and they reinforce each other, our crime situation is such that if we cannot fix that, I just don't see how we can fix the other areas. And so that's why crime is the top priority. But it also means stepping up for schools. So instead of pointing fingers at APS, we're going to help them. We are going to provide as many after-school and summer programs as we can for our kids. And that doesn't matter if APS is part of the solution or they're doing their own thing and we're supplementing where we can after school and over the summer. I know this, I'm not going to wait any longer for the reforms that need to happen in our school system. We've got to do them for our own kids. And the only way a city can do that is after school and over the summer. Now, also when it comes to economic development, we're committed to looking to ourselves for job growth. It means we want to encourage companies to move here. We want to learn from best practices, but it means that we've got to say who is a company that is growing here in Albuquerque today, where we have a competitive advantage, whether it's because the intellectual capital is here through the labs and through UNM, or it's because of our geographic location. Whatever that thesis is, I know this, we want a high return on investment for economic development activities. That is very different than trading down wages for any call center job that will come here, and while we're shedding Intel jobs. This has been another fundamental drain on our economy. Our unemployment rate is not terrible, but we keep trading a high-wage job for a low-wage job. And I know that's well-intentioned, because any job is better than no job. But we can't deliberately keep subsidizing that, because we're deliberately driving down the wage rate in Albuquerque. So for me, I think if we can focus on those key basic areas, we can actually also be one city. And this is what I want to really leave you with today, and then I'm going to leave plenty of time for questions on specifics. Because the third thing that I think we have to regain in Albuquerque is this notion that even if we live in Los Ranchos or in High Desert or in Corrales or in the South Valley, we are one city. We rise and fall with Albuquerque. And even the state of New Mexico in many ways, just because of the population. We are all in this together. And as Albuquerque goes, so goes the rest of the state, and certainly the rest of the region. And that's why I believe we've got to come together and we've got to look past some of these historical divisions that have held us back. It's not about how downtown is one part of the city and the Heights is somewhere different, or about how Rio Rancho is a different city than us. Economically, and for our kids growing up here, none of that matters. They're all tied together, and especially when it comes to public safety. Whether it's Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department or it's APD is an irrelevant question to somebody in their time of need. It's also an irrelevant question to a criminal. They do not care, and so neither should we. We have got to work together, and that means taking ownership for what we can do and doing our best wearing the particular hat that we're given. I want to be a mayor that helps the county, that helps APS, that helps the state. But I want the state to be a state that helps Albuquerque. And I want the county to be a county that helps the city of Albuquerque. That's what I mean by coming together. That's what I mean by us each taking ownership in one city, the one city that we all live in, happens to be called Albuquerque. That is what we have to do going forward. And so I believe if we can actually do that, we can take control of our future. And we can stop trying to be another city. I don't want to be Portland. I don't want to be Denver. They all have their great things and they all have their challenges. But we know we have right here in Albuquerque all that we need. We just have to be the best Albuquerque we can be. We can learn from other cities, but we do what we have to do in our own way. And we don't necessarily have to say that just because another city is doing it means it's right for Albuquerque. But it also means that we can take good ideas and adapt them to our own unique cultural history, to that identity that we're all driven by fundamentally. It's that intersection between our cultural history and our geographic location. Those two things are why this area has been inhabited for thousands of years. That core identity is what we have to build on. That core identity is something that no other city can compete with. That's what we have to return to when it comes to owning our city for the future. So if we can do that, I believe we can actually be the best Albuquerque we can be going forward. Now the good news is, I think our future is bright. Our city, by comparison, has that natural narrative, that cultural identity that I mentioned, that no other city has. So we have comparative advantage when it comes to that. We also have our modern strengths, whether it comes to our university and our labs. But I think now what we're seeing is this. Denver has too much traffic. It's also too expensive. And they have major big city challenges. Now Austin's having the same problem. Now Portland's having the same problem. I can tell you a lot of the companies that want to move here, they just want that natural beauty and that cultural diversity without those problems. And right now we can offer that. And that also has to do with cost of living. So now, all of a sudden, we are actually positioned extremely well versus our competitors. And I think that is a great thing for Albuquerque. That makes me believe that if we can actually clean up our streets when it comes to crime, deal with our homelessness issue, we can help a little bit by investing in our local companies and by supporting programs for our kids. Albuquerque sells itself. We have all the natural competitive advantages we need. We just have to run a better city. So I hope with your help we can do that. And I want to wrap up with a few thoughts on that. But let me change gears for a minute because I want to allow some time for questions. But I want to talk about two things, APD and art. Not that they're related. We have turned a major corner when it comes to where our police department is at with the Department of Justice. And no matter how you look at it, know that the Department of Justice is costing us $3 million a year. Ironically, money we could be using for more officers. But that process, there's one person in charge of that process, and it is a federal judge. And that judge knows that we have to pursue and finish these reforms regardless. And so I know who's in charge now, and I think our city does too. And we are committed to doing those reforms to the spirit of why they were done in the first place. But it also means restarting with the DOJ whole team. And I'm proud to say that we have done that. We have gotten completely different reviews and results than years past. And we are on much better footing. And we have a path going forward that is positive, that someday will actually lead to the completion of those reforms and us taking our police department back. That's where we've made a huge, tremendous amount of progress, and it's as a big result to everyone in the community who's involved in that and to our new leadership at APD. And so for that, I want to say thank you, and I think we should be very optimistic. Now, with respect to art, we also, and one more thing on APD. I know this tax passed. 80% of that tax is going to public safety, and that's exactly what it should do. The rest of it is just going to plug the money that's being taken from us because of some tax changes at the state level. So make no mistake about it, after that money comes in, and now our district attorney got some funding from the state, we've got to deliver and we've got to perform, and that's our responsibility. But at least we're finally going to have enough resources to hopefully make a dent in our crime situation. Now, with respect to our bus project, this one is kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good news is we're basically done with construction. Central is open for business. We've got fiber optic under the ground. We've got new pavement and parking and trees and landscaping, and Central is open for business. Now, I think the bad news is, and there's some good, the federal budget has money in it, as you might have heard, for reimbursement for our project. But it's not specific to Albuquerque. So it is still a choice to be made by the FTA. What we are committed to is we're going to have our paperwork in order, we're going to file it, and we hope we are going to get that money because now the money is actually up there. But these are grants and they are a choice made by the FTA. And so it's possible that we don't get those dollars. So we have a contingency in place for that, but I'm hopeful we're going to be able to get those dollars. And in case folks didn't know kind of the background, this project was built on spec. In every letter we got, there is words like, at your own risk, after you're cleared to proceed. And that's what that means. So we never had this money guaranteed, but hopefully we're going to be able to get it. The biggest challenge are the buses. And we are renegotiating our contract with the bus company, BYD. This company is one of the largest bus companies in the world, but they've never made a 60-foot electric bus in America. And so that is presenting all of these challenges. And so we are hopeful that we can come to kind of a blended solution, make the best of it, get it up and running, but it is going to take a while. We think we can do it this year, but I want to minimize the risk of getting buses that are lemons. And so we're working on that, and actually the company agrees with this. So they're going to keep fixing them as long as we keep sending them back. So that's what we're going to do. So that's why I do ask for everyone's patience. I know there's a lot of anxiety around finishing it or not finishing it. I will tell you we have to finish it because the money also has already been spent. We've literally paid off the contractors almost 100% who built that project. And so sometime this year, we're either going to have to cut a check out of future capital projects or because the FTA is going to reimburse us. But there is no way we can get that money back. The ship has already sailed, or the bus has already left the station. So let me end by saying this. I do believe that our city needs your help. I talked about this notion of being one city, of returning to the idea that instead of pointing fingers, instead of waiting for others, we all have ways that we can step up. And I think on an individual basis, this could be participating in your Rotary Club. It could be participating in your neighborhood association. It could be helping out with community policing. It could be literally calling 311 more. It could be calling Crime Stoppers. We are in for a long summer. These resources, these plans are not going to happen overnight. And so we've got to come together as a city and realize that there has to be a way for each one of us to actually help our city be a better city. Because I think in the long run, these problems are going to get worked out and these plans are going to help. But in the short term, we need each other. We need the business community to help APD get the additional resources they need when it comes to one-time expenditures or officers in their facilities or working with organized crime and combating against auto theft. We need everyone in other government official areas to say, can we help Albuquerque? Instead of saying, why isn't Albuquerque doing X, Y, or Z? There are ways, I believe, for every one of us to help our city be a better place. And I hope we can do that going forward. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity, and I think we've got a little time for a few questions. Thank you so much.